Hello, everyone, and welcome to Unity's official live stream. I'm your usual host, Hassan, and I'm back with another episode of Unity Tales. It's the show where we explore stories from the Unity community. We had such an enthusiastic reaction from you for the first two episodes with Lana Lux and Zalavier, Nelson Jr., so we just had to keep the series going. And today we have another amazing guest. As you may have figured from the title, that guest is Madison Karrh. So Madison is known as the developer behind the surreal adventure puzzle game Birth. So she's had a really interesting journey into solo game development, which personally I find super inspiring. She also has a really unique perspective and style that she brings to all of her games. So she'll be joining us to walk her through her journey and through all the games that she's worked on before her latest game. But before we bring her on, let's look at the trailer for Birth. Hello, Madison. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. How are you doing?
I am doing so well. How are you?
Yes, I'm very good. Thank you so much. So
Good.
for everyone who's watching, we have a lot of people joining us from Twitch and from YouTube Live. And for the people who will watch this in the recording after the fact, can you give us just a high-level introduction to who you are? Who is Madison Karrh?
Hi. Yes, my name is Madison, and I make small, macabre, semi-autobiographical games. I've just released Birth a few months ago on Steam and PC. And it will come out on Xbox in 2 days if you're watching this live, which is super exciting.
Ooh.
And it's my first console release ever.
That's amazing. So we timed this perfectly. You could almost say
Yeah.
perfectly timed. Amazing. And so as we're going through the stream, we're going to be dropping the link to the game in the chat. So if you want to wishlist the game, you can do that on Steam, or if you want it on Xbox, just wait for that in 2 days. So super be patient. Just wait a bit.
Yes.
It's coming soon. Hold your horses. So we just got a little glimpse at the game, and it's like I said, it's got such a super unique art style, and we're gonna dive into that. And I'm personally super curious how you found your voice and how you found that style, and we'll get into all of that. But I like to start these right at the beginning. You know, from your youth, from your childhood, how you got into games, what the first games you played were, like what your exposure to the gaming industry was. So I'd love to hear a bit more about that.
Yeah. When I was young, I played games with my brother, but there was not really a big initiative internally to play games. And I unfortunately fell prey to the story of video games are not for girls. And so, we played a lot of GameCube games, and I played The Sims for a while, but around middle school, I just decided that I was like, I don't like Call of Duty or Assassin's Creed. So I guess that's all video games are, and I can't play them, which is so sad. I feel like I was robbed of a whole experience of gaming in my childhood. But luckily, in my early 20s, I crossed paths again with games, and they were much different than they were then, and I felt like I just connected much more with them. I played Skyrim. Skyrim was the first game that I played coming back, and just was so obsessed with. I had my house, and I collected all of the books in the world and would bring them back to my house, so then my house would take so long to load because I had all of the book objects in there. And then Fallout, just a lot of big open world games that were a brand new experience for me, that I was like, whoa, you can spend 60 or 70 hours just running around in here.
That's crazy. Then, I love how you went from not playing things to jumping into these massive experiences.
So intense. Yeah.
Okay.
So then I did reel it back eventually and was like, oh, let's see like what smaller games exist. And I ran the this was in like 2015 probably. So I had like a lot of good like indies to catch up on, and played a lot of smaller games. And then probably in like 2018, I played Frog Detective, as well as like the Rusty Lake games. And those are both made by small teams. And I think that was like my first indication of like, oh, you can just make something and like put it on the internet and then other people will play. I think especially Frog Detective has so much humor in it, and you can like really sense the developer. You can like,
Hear
I
their
feel
voice.
like that. Yeah. And so I feel like that was just super inspiring.
Okay.
And I'd gone to school for teaching originally. I wanted to teach kindergarten, and I worked in a preschool for a long time, and then learned how to code from taking a math class. We had to take like a how to teach math class while I was going through my education.
Were you about to teach coding to kindergarten kids?
No, I was not, but maybe in an alternate world. I think they do learn programming at schools now, which I'm so jealous
That's
of.
awesome.
I wish
Me too.
I know. I wish I had learned how to program when I was like 6
Seriously.
or whatever. I feel like
It's never too
my
late.
brain.
Never too late.
I know it really isn't.
Yeah.
Still young. And so I think from there I just like fell in love with math and coding, but I didn't like fully grasp the creative piece of it. And so I graduated school with my computer science degree and worked at a boring software company writing financial software. And of course was like looking for a creative, was looking for a creative outlet. And after playing Frog Detective, it was really just like, oh, okay, let's see. So I just like Googled, how do you make a game?
Oh, yeah. That makes sense. That would be the first step, right?
Yes.
So, literally the first step. Okay.
Yeah.
And
like,
what came up?
Yeah. How hard is this? Unity and Unreal obviously are both the two big ones. And I think Unity is just really welcoming for beginners in general. I think Unreal had a little bit of a larger learning curve for me.
Right.
And I wasn't programming in C# at work and really wanted to program in a language that I was not programming in at work. And so that was
tired of programming in that what were you programming in at work?
A lot of C++ and a lot of JavaScript. So
that's so interesting. Okay, yet you decided to just change. You just wanted to change, basically.
Yeah, I think so. I think I don't know if I was blaming C++ or if I was like, that language is a boring language, but it's really not. It's a great language. But so I downloaded Unity and made so many bad little things, but was instantly addicted to it in the same way that like when I started doing web development, I was so I was just so amazed that you could make something and then it would be on a web browser and it was like,
share it with anyone.
Yeah. And I was like, that wasn't there before. And now it is there because I typed in some letters and numbers into a text editor. So
that's so true.
Yeah. So I think Unity was similarly.
And what resources did you use to like get into Unity? Like, did you use Unity Learn, or was there anything that helped in particular, or YouTube, or
YouTube? I think I can't remember if Brackeys was like making stuff at the time, but there were definitely like there's so many like beginner follow this to make this game. And luckily I didn't really have a game specifically that I was like, oh, I'll use that as my tutorial. So it was a lot more of like, how do you get art into Unity? Right. And then like, what can I do with that art? So it felt a lot more experimental and less structured. And I would just like, I would get to the next step and then be like, okay, what do I want to do next? And how do I look that up? Versus like taking a course all at once. It was definitely like a
non-linear
style. Yeah. Okay. It was like small plates.
That's cool.
Of learning.
So you didn't overwhelm yourself with like this big project and then get demotivated by that. You were just like, oh, I'll learn bit by bit and that's fine.
Yeah. And I'm so thankful that I did it that way, because I feel like if I had the pressure of like trying to finish a project, or if I even knew much about the video games industry in and of itself, I probably would not have had the motivation to keep going. I'm thankful that it was like all intrinsic.
Yes. Okay. And I love how like playing those bigger games, you know, when you play like Skyrim or Assassin's Creed, when you play those games, you can't even you don't even think, oh, I could make something like this, because it's so massive, it's so huge.
Right.
You wouldn't even for a second consider being able to make something. I mean, at least I didn't, and from the looks of it, like you had that same experience. But then as soon as you played something of reasonable scope and size, you're like, wait a minute. Did you like read an article and hear that it was made by one person or just a few people, or did you just get that feeling right away from that voice you were talking about?
Yeah, I think with Frog Detective, I think because Grace has a bit in the game where she's like presented herself as a character, and she's like breaking the fourth wall a little bit. I was like, oh, that's so cute, and I want to know more about that.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, and then the Rusty Lake games similarly had an interview where it was just the two guys that worked on it for the most part at the beginning, and read that and was like, wow, you really can just, of course they were making Flash games and not Unity games. So Unity made it a little bit easier, I think.
A little easier. Okay, and so then you started messing around with those little, like, in the sandbox format, experimental, like, oh, how do you get assets in? How do you, when did that transition into like, you know what, maybe I will make a small game project?
I don't think I built like an executable for probably a year. I think I don't know, maybe like 6 months. And then I was like, oh, okay, I had to like learn this is how, if you want to look at anything outside of the editor, this is how you have to do it. But I lived in the editor for so long. And I think luckily when you're first starting, you do have, I forget what the term is, where you don't know what you don't know yet. You like don't have you still have the ignorance to think what you're making is like pretty good and like pretty neat. And so luckily it was like not long after that I decided like, oh, okay, I'll just build a package up like what I have now. I had made, when I started, I was working in 3D, which I have switched. I only made one little 3D game. And then switched to 2D just because I think I have more control over the style, but the 3D game is very funny.
Yeah.
So I think it was a pretty quick thing where I think when you don't know what you don't know, you're like, you have this like unearned confidence almost. And I'm really thankful that I did have that at the time, because now obviously looking back at my old games feels like, I don't know if that should be on the internet. I don't know if that's worth anyone's time, but
you wouldn't have done it otherwise, right? You had
exactly.
to have confidence in the moment, and you do your best, basically, right?
Yes.
The best that you're capable of doing at that moment.
Yes,
that'll change over time, right? Here we have better late than ever. We have some footage of some of the games that you were inspired by. Just playing right now. Which game is this?
Yeah, so this is Silent Hill 2.
Okay.
And I am inspired a lot by old survival horror games. In general, I think they were just like, for the most part, mostly pretty funny. I think the older ones are. But I think there's like a nice ebb and flow of like action adventure, and then, getting to know the like characters and relationships that you have in the game. And I think the puzzles... At the time, I feel like we've become much more hand-holdy in the industry, which I know is like good for accessibility reasons. But I do think there's like a lot of mystery and intrigue with old survival horror that feels like, was anyone supposed to ever figure this out? This seems so
honestly,
obtuse.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. And then I think we have some Resident Evil, of course. Code Veronica, also very inspiring in general.
Yeah, and I can tell from the games like that you're inspired by. I see traces of it in the games that you're working on.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I think it's I of course love point and click games and have been inspired by those, but I do think there's something interesting that happens when you're taking separate genres and trying to merge them into the genre you prefer working in. I think it's nice to just take like a little sampling, a little spoonful from a lot of genres in general.
Yeah, and what is this one over here?
This is
clearly we were it's true what you say, because we were just on a horror adventure game and now we're here. So.
This is Moon. I think it's called anti-RPG. It's like the opposite of an RPG where you're like super weak and you're like not the superhero in the game. But it's a Japanese game that only recently got an English release in the past like 2 years, I think.
I see.
And I'm so thankful that it did. It's a weird claymation style that's also super obtuse. There's like a bit in this where you have like a health meter, but it doesn't tell you it's the health meter. So you will, if you don't get back home before your day runs out, you just die and lose all your progress. But it doesn't tell you that. And so I think there's probably like a theme of not holding your hand that I really like. I think I like when a game confidently presents what it is and trusts that you will figure it out.
Kind of respect the player too.
Yeah, I think so. Oh. And then we also have Nights into Dreams, which is the best. I played this on Sega Saturn, and it is...
It's a classic.
Yeah, it is so amazing. And it's just very chaotic, and I just love like the low poly piece of it. This is also a situation where it doesn't hold your hand, so there's like no instructions on like what you're supposed to be doing in the levels. You kind of just start, and you're just like hoping that you figure out, hoping that you're getting like the amount of points. You have no idea like which pieces give you points or hurt you even. So
just like, let's mess around, let's experiment, let's bump into everything, let's like throw everything, go everywhere. I like that.
Yeah, I think it is amazing. And then I don't know if we have any. Fran Bow, of course, a good classic point and click game that does fit more of like the... I don't necessarily like in point and click games when you are walking a character around, which I know is like, that's what most point and click games are. And so I think with most of my games, I've like cut that out. You don't have someone that you're walking around. You're just clicking into things. So
right. And I can't wait to dive into all of that. How the game actually runs.
And then the Rusty Lake games, of course, also super inspiring. And I think that's like a pretty obvious inspiration for the stuff that I make.
Any others? Or is that the last one?
Let's see. I think that might be the last one.
There we go. Back around to Silent Hill.
Nice. Yes.
I like the journey we went on. It like it got super. It's like started super dark, got really whimsical and fun, and then went right back to dark towards the end. Yeah,
it's good. You got to take a sampling of all flavors.
It's good, like you said, exactly. And then you started messing around and working on your own projects. And your strong point was programming, right? Because that was your background.
Yeah, I didn't know anything about art at all.
Yeah, and so like you were like, I'm gonna figure this out.
Yeah, and that's I think starting with, which is weird that I started with 3D. You think that like as a 2D is like the first step you would take before moving into the next dimension, but I think just because I had played Frog Detective, I was like, oh, I want to make low poly characters too. Of course, you like mimic when you're first starting any creative medium, you're like mimicking what you love already. And so I started with 3D and made my first little 3D game that is available.
And it is available. So we'll play it. We'll put that footage up. You're like, should I show this? Should I not show this?
This is like the first time I think this is Frog Detective. Please do not think that this is...
This is not the first game you worked on. This is what you were inspired by, Frog Detective.
It is good to see the contrast, I think, of Frog Detective and then what I created as a result.
Just such a cute game. And so we'll switch to the first game you made now, and we'll put that up. And we'll also drop a link to that itch game. Here it is, so you can speak to that.
It is. Yeah. And it is as glorious as it looks like it is. It's very like just me making assets in Maya and then being like, put them on a square, and then put some text in there and send it out to people and ask someone to play it. So this is the first time I think I'm ever like actually talking about this in public and like acknowledging this isn't even like I don't like ever.
Oh, so this is like under a different name. This is like your pen name.
I think it is under I think I did publish it under Madison Karrh, but it's like not public on my itch page at all. But you can, if you have the link to it, you can download it.
Having seen all the games and the latest one, it's crazy that even though this is the first thing you worked on, I still see touches that made their way to the
that skull
coming games.
creature.
The skull creature, even the way you draw the paper and all the skull creatures and this whole world. So what is this game about? What do you do? And how did you did you just start learning 3D modeling, Blender?
I was using Blender and really just making a lot of assets. You can tell it's definitely just like a conglomerate of it looks like someone's sketchbook in 3D. There's not really like a purpose to it. You're doing like a lot of fetch quests from what I remember.
I'm sad and the rainy clouds. Love that.
I think I mostly was just like really inspired by Frog Detective's like funny characters that were like, go and get something for me. And I was like, I'll do that.
For you, anything. I'll do it.
So this was the only time that I made something in 3D, and then I quickly pivoted from this, but I couldn't even tell you how long I worked on this, maybe a few months.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah, and
is there an end to this game, or does this just keep going? I love how it's like this little open world. You go where you want.
I know, tiny, and I show you how tiny it is.
Yeah.
There's definitely not an ending. I think there's just you do all the quests that are in here. There's probably it probably takes 15 or 20 minutes to play this. And I had no idea the structure of what a game should have. So there's no pivotal, you did all the quests. Good job.
Here's the ending cutscene.
It's definitely not. It's also not kind to you with I think you use the right click button instead of the left click button to interact with things.
Interesting. Okay.
So it is definitely not kind to you as the player. And I would not recommend playing this.
You're who needs standards? Let's experiment. But that's what these first games are for, right? To just put all that stuff out, basically.
It is.
My favorite character is the one on the table reading the book. I think that character looks so cool.
Oh, thank you. She's cute.
yeah, really nice. And okay, so we'll jump to this. We'll show off the second game, and you can talk to that one. So this one's called Whimsy.
Yeah, and then I started.
Now you can really see the style, starting to get to it closer to birth, basically.
Yeah. I think the switch to 2D was a good move on my part. It is interesting to see my lines were so thick. I drew such thick lines here.
I noticed that,
it is sweet. Whimsy I also would not necessarily recommend playing. It's better than Hello World, but it's fun to see the art, but also similarly unkind in its UI and UX. It just doesn't really, I didn't know much about designing an experience where someone was clicking through dialogue boxes.
Right.
Again, just a situation where I wanted to put a bunch of art. It's really a sketchbook is what it feels like.
Gotcha. It's it's like a digital sketchbook for yourself, and you just happen to share it to the world as well.
Yes.
That's really cool. And so when you started learning, we kind of touched on this, but when you started learning how to draw, how did you get yourself to, because from my understanding, you didn't, you hadn't drawn before, extensively, right? And you wanted to improve that skill. So what did you do to be okay, I'm going to, this is going to be part of my skill set? Because then there are a lot of people who have their skills, people who are watching right now. They're yeah, I'm good at this. I don't think I can do anything else. But I feel you just made it work.
Yeah, I think when you feel when you're addicted to part of it, the rest of it you just really want to know. I really wanted to be able to make all of it myself.
Yeah.
And so I ordered a Wacom tablet. I knew nothing about digital drawing, but I just saw a Wacom tablet. That was the one that was recommended. And that came with a 2-year subscription of Clip Studio.
Oh, nice.
Which is the drawing software that I use. I don't know what I would have used if it hadn't been for that. Maybe any of the other, maybe Procreate I would have gotten into. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I still use Clip Studio just because I had that free subscription at the beginning and I'm afraid of change. So, I just, you can tell the resolution on this is super weird. I did not know how to draw assets for games at all. I just knew I had a New Year's resolution that I was going to draw every day. And so I would open up.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So I would
Did you actually stick to that resolution?
I did. And maybe in the past year or so, I don't do it anymore because as long as I'm working on the game every day, it doesn't matter. But yeah, for the first 2 years, I needed it. I'm glad that I did that because it made it. That was my weakest link for sure. Well, I guess sound design is probably still my weakest link. Maybe I should have a New Year's resolution where I make audio
sound every day.
Yeah.
Wait, so you also you did the sound design for this game as well?
I did.
You
yeah.
did everything.
Yeah,
sound,
it's
audio,
not good.
programming.
And it's, when I say sound design, I mean it's downloaded sounds from free sound or something. I didn't start making sounds until Birth. Birth is all like custom audio.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah, but other than that, it is just listening to dozens and dozens of like free sound .org or whatever.
Yes, that's the one.
Files. Yes, you're just like, okay, I can
curating.
make that work.
You were a sound curator.
Yes,
you can make anything sound cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll switch to the next game. So this is before the game you did latest before Birth, and you can really tell like I'm really starting to see. Feels like a long sketchbook working up to this like grand painting.
Yeah,
honestly.
thank you. That's so
working
sweet.
on your style and improving it. Now, I like having played Birth. I see a lot of elements here that are almost directly brought in and improved upon into Birth. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I think you can tell like the style. I like develop a style here, and all of this is like happening at like I couldn't even tell you when I like started changing stuff. I think it's just if you work on something every day, you get better at it.
Right.
But it's very intuitive and there's not like a way to describe what's happening. It just feels like my brain is doing like magic.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, this came out in 2021. I made it during quarantine.
Okay.
And this is I think like the start of where I was like, oh, I accidentally make games about myself a lot. And so this is about like trying to find a new job and being unhappy with your current job.
Yeah.
Just like looking for meaning. And there is no like real story other than you're the landlord and you're collecting rent from the tenants.
I see. Okay.
So I do think that's like probably a throughput in most of my games is that I really just want to show you a bunch of art. And that's like my main goal. So gameplay, I don't think anyone's playing my games for the gameplay necessarily. I think it's mostly just it looks cute.
And it's an experience, right? It's the experience, it's enjoying the art. It's like almost like, it's like the experience when you go to a museum and you're taking things in and you kind of like, it makes you feel a certain way. But I will say like, even the, like looking at like playing Birth, there are puzzle elements and it is quite fun as well, right?
So, thank you. Yeah.
And so, so we're working on this game. Like the last one you said is more of a sketchbook. This one you say started to have a story, like kind of an autobiographical, kind of semi-autobiographical story. So like, is that right? Is that how the transition happened? You're like, you know what? I'm feeling this certain thing. I want to put it down now. Now that I know how to do this, I kind of want to put this out and I want people to try it, to play it and kind of,
Yeah, kind of. I don't know if it was as literal. I think I will always be like this where I want to make a character that has a certain feeling. Like with Landlord, I was like, okay, I'm going to make a character and they're not going to be happy like with their job. And then I like over the course of making it am like aware that I'm making something about myself. And so it usually is like takes, and I don't know if I'll ever learn that. I don't know. Even with Birth, making a character that was really lonely, I was like, why is this character so lonely? And then I was like, oh, it's because I'm very lonely and I can't believe I am like so transparent with my art.
And so like there's a comment here in the chat that says from Sergio 8419 asks, or it says, just create games without thinking. That's what you want. So
that's amazing.
That's really interesting. It sounds kind of like you were doing it without overthinking it, and that way, and somehow like a lot of authenticity was coming through.
Yeah,
into the project.
That's an amazing description. I think that probably a lot of it is also because I didn't know there was like any way to make money from games like that. I didn't know. I thought it would always be a side thing. And so I think that's also part of it is that I didn't have a financial goal at first, which I feel really lucky that I was able to just make games on the side while working a full-time job.
So there wasn't that pressure basically.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so you're like, I'm doing this for me. I'm expressing myself in a sense, and like, okay, cool. And then that lands in. We've arrived at Birth now, so we'll play that footage and we'll look at that. And I really like looking at even just as you mentioned the lines. There, in the previous games, there were like the lines were a lot more thick. There was different. Every asset had its own line thickness, and now here you can tell it's so refined, and I can see that you were drawing every single day, and now you've come up with such a like unique art style.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I think the comment about like every object having different line width in other games is really funny. And I think this time I knew how to make assets for a game, and I knew they needed to be the same resolution, and you couldn't just like export whatever you wanted and put it in the game.
The proper asset import process.
Yes, the pipeline.
The pipeline. and you can tell like just from the gameplay here, everything is so tactile and just like physical.
Thank you. I do use the Unity physics system with a plug for sure.
Okay. Just looking at all the different puzzles, and this game is loaded with different mini games and puzzles and experiences, and we're gonna come back and talk about the game. But before that, before you actually made this game, I think it was maybe after your second or your third game, you moved to work at a studio using Unity, right?
I did.
So what was that experience? That was after your finance programming job. After you learned Unity, you're like, okay, let me find a job, right?
Yes, and luckily it was before quarantine. I was living in Nashville at the time, and I really wanted to move to Montreal. That was my like main goal. I visited Montreal and was like, oh, this is beautiful.
I'm in Montreal. It is beautiful.
I know. I'm so envious. Me from
welcome. Come anytime.
And ended up, of course, staying in States. And now I live in Chicago, which is close enough to Montreal, I guess. Weather-wise, I think we have similar winters.
Unfortunately.
I had just come to the realization that you can work in Unity for money, that people will pay you to make their games. And so luckily was able to leave my finance job and worked at a studio making medical simulation games. They were calling them video games, but most of them were just like surgery simulators. We can't show any footage here because they are very nasty and very
gory. Okay.
There are a lot of open body surgeries, but we were using Unity to make those.
Okay, wait. Oh, that's so interesting. Hearing that makes me wonder if there's a connection between that and what you did in.
I know, it's so funny.
Connecting those dots.
It's so funny because I wasn't aware of that, but when I was showing birth and would talk about working at the surgery company, people were like, oh, I can see why you're so comfortable with like bodies and bones. And I was like, oh, I wish I wasn't. I wish that wasn't true, but it is.
People in the chat are like, nice, let me see it. We're like, we're not showing it.
No.
We don't want this stream to get shut down suddenly. You know? We want to reach the end.
Keep it safe for work.
Exactly. And at the time you were using different tools from the asset store as well?
Yeah, we used, for the most part, I was programming in C#, and we made a lot of editor tools. But we were early adopters of Bolt, I think, to do some visual scripting because we had a lot of designers. And Hassan, I think you worked at Bolt.
Yeah, I used to work at Bolt before I worked at Unity, and now Bolt is like Unity's visual scripting solution, right?
They're darling.
It's called Unity Visual Scripting now. So,
but it was called Bolt at the time, and we had to import it manually because it wasn't even available like as an asset. So we were doing that so our level designers could make content without needing programmers because we had hired a lot of level designers at the time. And that is, I don't know that I would ever use visual scripting. I think debugging is pretty hard in visual scripting. But it was fun to see people create things without needing help, only to a certain extent. And then it's like, okay, I've made a big spaghetti pile. Can you look at it?
Can you fix it for me? Yeah, it's a great way to figure out the logic as well, like just the logic of programming without having to learn all the syntax, basically. And for those like designers, game designers, level designers, to just get their hands dirty and like put things together. It's a good feeling. It gives you that feeling, and then I've found for a lot of people, it gives them that desire. It sparks that interest to then go off and learn C#, and then
I think so too. So I'm thankful that Unity adopted it because it's also very pretty and a cute visual scripting language.
You see all the juice flowing.
All your little
between
nodes.
the nodes.
Yeah. Looks really nice.
Exactly. And so then after that, like, what made you decide? Okay, you know what? I'm done with all this gory stuff.
I think I just got burnt out. I worked there for a year and a half, I think, through quarantine, and I just got burnt out making. I don't think I was like very creatively fulfilled at work, and I think there's like I'd gotten more certain that I wanted to make games for a living,
Right.
my own games.
Yeah.
And I think once I had that realization, it took a few months, of course, to like figure out funding and how to do that full time.
Yeah.
I was just feeling really burnt out and had heard of Wings. And they fund games made by women. They are not a publisher per se, but they are a financier. I applied through their website. It's like a super simple, I think it took me like 20 minutes. Of course, I had to make a pitch deck, which I never made a pitch deck before.
Don't tell me you made a pitch deck in 20 minutes.
No.
Okay. The application was 20 minutes. I was like, wow, you're on fire.
That took me weeks. And I'd been working on...
It took me 20 minutes. The game took me an hour. And I was done.
Easy. Yeah. So I'm making 10 games a month. It's simple for me. I had made a good chunk of Birth, but I didn't know exactly what the story fully was. I just knew that I wanted you to be in a city and building a body, but I was doing the thing where I was like, I don't really know why I want to make this game. I don't know. It's not about me for sure. And so making the pitch deck, I think, really helped me refine those like thoughts and like design pieces that I would not have thought about. I think like the person who commented about like making games without thinking was like my design up until then. And then I was like, if you want to get money for something you're making before you're done with it, you have to like tell someone about it in a meaningful way.
So in a way you were telling yourself about it too.
Yes, absolutely. I learned so much through making the pitch deck. I still don't like making pitch decks, but they are helpful for that, for both getting money and also learning about what you're making.
Right. That's one thing I wouldn't mind AI taking over, making my pitch decks for me. You know what I'm saying?
I'll give it my brain and it can tell me what I'm making and why I'm making it.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, cool. And so were you living alone when you were like working at that studio before going full time? Okay, so that you were feeling all those feelings that built up, and then you were like, okay, was there a crossover between I'm working full time and now I'm working on Birth and now let me go full time? Or it's like, did you sever that cord and then go work on
no.
Birth?
So I was still working on Birth probably for 6 months before I got funding. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And would just wake up in the mornings. And I used to be, when I would work on like Whimsy and the first like few games I was making, when I would go into an office, somehow that was easier for me to like work in the mornings. And then I would have a separation between work and my two different works, my like fun time and work. And you would think that working from home, you would be like, you don't have to like commute and travel, which is true. But I just felt like I don't know, because I did my actual job at the desk, it felt harder to switch to going back to working on Birth. But I still worked on it every day, every morning. And usually most evenings too. I think just living alone during the quarantine, what else are you going to do? And I'm thankful that I had a creative outlet that I wanted to work on so often, because I was never bored during quarantine. I was just like really motivated.
Good. That's awesome.
Yeah. So then
everyone needed that thing, right?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm glad that mine resulted in a game, because I could easily see. I know a lot of people that got really good at making bread.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so true. And I don't know if anybody's still making bread. They're like, I'm just going to buy my bread now.
I don't know if anyone has a bakery.
I'm done. Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's true.
We've had enough bread.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So then I got funding that was in a year and a half ago. So it's been a year and a half since I've been full time. I quit in like March of last year. And I've worked on it full time since then, which is a different kind of course, it's like a huge privilege and I'm so thankful, but it's a different kind of stressful to like feel like, how do you take a PTO day when you are working on your when if you don't work, especially as a solo developer, if you don't make something, nothing is getting made.
And did you still have a sort of deadline? Like, I assume you were given a certain amount. We're not going to go into numbers, but I assume you were given a certain amount of funding.
Yes.
And did that give you like a runway? You're like, okay, I can live off of this for a year, or I can live off of this for 2 years before I have to get a job. Was there an aspect of that in the back of your mind? Or
yeah, there was. And also I told a release date. I had like announced that I was going to come out in August of last year. I did not come out until February of this year. I like postponed it 6 months. And that's just because I didn't know how to finish a game with any kind of like audience or anything. Like when you've announced it and you have to do a press release and all of the
it's a whole different thing.
Those
are jobs. Those are entire jobs, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And you think as a solo developer, you're like, oh, it's easy to send a few emails, but it is exhausting. And I'm thankful for any PR person or biz dev relations person. That is a thankless job, I think, honestly.
Right.
Yeah. So
and you had to do it. And
yes.
So now we'll actually talk. We'll dive deeper into the game. So for anybody who missed just the beginning, I would like to play the trailer again, full screen, and we'll come back right after the trailer. So if you weren't there in the beginning when we played the trailer for the game, we'll do that with the audio and everything now. So we'll be right back after the trailer. So there you go. Did you make that trailer yourself?
I did. That was also another piece.
Another skill, another job. So just picking up a video editing program. And was that like your first shot, or did you do like iteration after iteration? I'm so curious.
Absolutely. Iteration after iteration. I think that's called trailer 17 on my
nice. Final. Really, the final one this time.
The true final one.
True final.
And I just use Windows like built-in video editor that they had on Windows 10.
No way.
Yeah.
Did you really?
Not high tech at all.
I'm very impressed because it's a great trailer. So like, what were you trying to convey with the trailer?
So at first I was not trying to convey anything. I was just like, oh, I'll just put some clips from the game. And then I got some feedback that was like, I don't really know what you do in the game. You're not like explaining anything. I have a hard time, I guess, as most game developers do, of like, I know the game so well, so I just need to show you some art from the game. But you have to like make the trailer from someone's perspective of like, what if this is the first time they're ever seeing
very true,
anything about the game. And I think luckily with Birth, it's easy enough because all of the scenes are so different and there's so much art to show that I feel like I have a really easy time just like taking several clips and putting them together. But I can't imagine trying to make a trailer that has to convey actual like design elements or like anything that's like more than just like you see a lot of cute art and do some puzzles and here's like a sampling of those, you know?
Yes. And it also conveys the feeling, I think, of
thank you.
Of the game. So that's also super important, right?
Yeah.
And so for people who are watching, like, can you give a high level of the game itself? Just the pitch of
Yes, I've not even pitched it.
No, it's all good.
I don't even have my pitch deck here. It is a game about, it's a game about living alone. And in order to quell your loneliness, you decide to create a friend for yourself from spare bones and organs that you find while traversing the city. So you're like navigating into like libraries and coffee shops and flower shops and digging around and trying to find bones and organs.
To me, it reminds me of when I moved back to Montreal later in my life, and it's like you go to all of these places. You know, you start off, you don't really have a community when you move back to when you move to a new place, right? So, it's like you're going to the bakery, you're going to the coffee shop, you're alone, and you're kind of building. This is my interpretation, right? I'm not here to pitching your game, but I feel like everybody will have a certain different interpretation related to their own life. That's what art does. But like you're kind of building your community, but it's represented in this game as like this person that you're putting together. I don't know how you saw it, but I'd actually be curious to know. And if you don't want to speak to it and you want it to be open, you don't have to.
No. I'm that's a beautiful description, and I have been like so thankful to hear other people's depictions of loneliness. Because it just feels like when you are vulnerable, it allows other people to be vulnerable with you. So most people would not share, because I think day-to-day loneliness is just kind of embarrassing in general to like admit to like, oh, I kind of have some sadness some
So true,
days.
yeah.
And I think you're right. I think like moving to a new city and because I was inspired by moving to Chicago and then the pandemic ending and like shops opening back up. And I think that like awkward feeling of like going to a coffee shop for the first time where you're like, this is everyone's regular place. And I'm going, I don't know what's on the menu and I have to order quickly because like someone's behind me and I don't have time to like really take in the whole menu.
Right.
I think there's something like super relatable about like the awkwardness of going to somewhere for the first time.
Yeah.
And like walking around and having to use like Google Maps, which is just showing everyone like, I have only lived here for a little bit. I don't know the way yet.
Right.
So I think there's a lot of awkwardness that comes from like doing new things for the first time. And especially by yourself, it's like totally different to go with a partner somewhere because you're almost sending this message of like, I am normal and loved. But when you're going by yourself, it feels like, oh, what's up? Like going to eat at a restaurant by yourself is like, I am very comfortable doing it. And I like eating by myself a lot.
Yeah.
But it definitely feels like, oh, just one? Oh, you're just one.
It's always that reaction. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, oh, okay. Just
you're
let me
watching
eat
this
it.
movie alone?
Yeah. It's like, oh, just one ticket? All right.
Yeah. Sure. I mean, do what you want.
Yeah.
So small popcorn then?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's definitely based on just like my daily walks through Chicago when I first moved and the realization of like all of the apartment buildings, you know, there's like tall buildings with like hundreds of windows on the side and realizing like, wow, someone lives in every single one of those and like has their own life and their own trinkets that they keep on their desk. And just the desire to know people's like daily lives is really inspiring.
Right. Looking at it from the outside and yeah. Okay. There's a piece in the game towards the end, which I don't know. I don't really want to spoil the game for people who are going to play, but that building vignette you just mentioned really comes through, I think.
Yeah. There was a woman that during quarantine when I would go on my daily little quarantine walks, she lived in like a basement apartment and she was, when I would walk my dog, I could see into her, she would keep her blinds open. And she would bring her duvet to her couch every day. And I would see her on the couch every day with her big duvet around her.
Okay.
Which is probably where there's like a building where there's like someone under a big duvet. And that's probably subconsciously what inspired it.
Yes, there is. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, oh, girl, what's going on?
Yeah. Are you okay?
Yeah.
Do you need to put together a human?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a game for you.
Yes. Yeah, and I love that. So yeah, the game, you're basically piecing together this body, like you said, and then yeah. So we have more to show for the game. We have some sketches and some concept art. So I really want to like go through some of that.
Yeah, let's look at it.
Yeah, so let's open up this sketchbook and you can walk. This is really cool. We haven't really gotten the chance to look at somebody's actual sketchbook, and it's very generous of you to like show this to us because I know it can be very personal.
I wish it was prettier.
No, I think it looks great. It's what's wonderful. It's exactly like, it looks really nice. Can you walk us through like some, like what you're really doing here? Are you like walking through like different mini games? Or are you?
Yeah, these are mostly just the scenes because in Unity I set up I just move the camera around to different scenes. And so all these like little rectangles are just like different camera scenes that I want you to see, which is typically how I work. That I think that's the museum that we're looking at. It's hard to tell, but my typical like and these are some designs. That rat did make it into the game, which is funny.
Yeah.
A lot of the art I think is just coming from like still doing like daily drawing practices, and then eventually you're like, oh, I'll use that in the game too.
That's an interesting process. Okay.
Yeah, I think I wish I held on to more of that. Lately I feel like I've been drawing. When I draw, it's for a game versus like just sitting on the couch and drawing nonsense. So yeah, for the most part, my like typical process is to just like draw the rectangles of what I want you to see, and then like connect them with like what object will you get on this screen, or like what puzzle is going to be on this screen.
Right.
And then I'm pretty quick to move into engine after that.
Yeah, and so like what I love about, I was reading some of these notes. I was peeking into your notebook, and I love how the way you write. It's like it's a mix of things, right? It's a bit of design, a bit of like how you're actually gonna code it, and a bit of how you're gonna integrate it in Unity. You're like, okay, this prefab will be placed in the scene, but then you're also like, this game is will work because of this, right? And like so it's really like stream of consciousness, and it's like that. It feels like the first step. It feels like the first, second, and third step before you actually jump into like the editor. And so you said you did mention that you like the game to look good as soon as possible, right?
I do, and that is an unfortunate fact about me. Is that
cool.
thank you. I wish that I was better at gray boxing. I just like to make art final. Even when I tell myself, okay, I'm making a gray box sketch right now.
Yeah.
I still like want to add the detail lines, and I want to color it in nice colors, which is a huge waste of time, of course. But
whatever keeps you going and having fun, right? It's meant to be a fun process.
That is true. So I don't think I'm the most efficient by any means, but I work in the most joyful way that I know how. And so that involves doing a lot of final art at the beginning. And I think that's what like little sketches help beforehand. So that way I know like structurally what I need to draw. And of course things get thrown away. I have like hundreds of assets that didn't make it into. And
we have some of those assets. So we'll put some of that concept art. We'll put that up now. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. And so this is like the first rough sketch that I have of, I think this is the antique shop.
Yeah.
And then it quickly becomes this.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. And so I use the rough sketch usually for like camera positions, because those are mostly stored. And then this is a rough sketch of the apothecary.
And is the game working at this point with this sketch, or no, that sketch is not integrated at all? Or
no, the game is working at that point. That's like what I import into Unity first. I call them all like demo images, and get the camera set up in the position and then redraw like actually what I want it to look like. But I just want to make sure that I'm not doing final art before I like know that it will work okay by clicking around. So I can like move the camera around in the demo scenes.
Okay. And then each asset will be imported on its own, I'm guessing. Yes. And then you can add like the physics to it. One thing I love is like the control of the game. It's like you're basically moving your mouse around and clicking, right?
Yeah.
And you've turned moving the mouse around into an important part of the game, which I think is cool. It's not just about the clicking. Like I'll move my mouse around the screen to like bump it into things and see what that physical reaction is. And that's actually not something I see in a lot of point-and-click adventure games. I really feel like you brought something new and like actually kind of important to. Like I was like, oh, this is a whole like avenue that this is not being explored, where you can just have fun just moving your mouse around the screen.
Thank you. I think so too. I think we rely too much on the actual interaction with the mouse, when the mouse itself is like a very fun piece of data to collect of like where you look. It's kind of like where are your eyes right now on the screen, like where have you moved yourself. So I think I will do a lot more in my like next games of the what you're talking about, where like the mouse is the puzzle, really. Like you're just like, where can I move my mouse around on the screen?
Okay. And like in terms of making puzzles, like you have so many in this game. Like there's a lot of different things, and they're all so different. What's your process for like okay, you sit down, you're like, puzzle time. I'm at my puzzle desk. I'm gonna figure out puzzles. What do you?
Puzzle time, which is exactly what I say when I sit down.
Of course.
Time. Yeah, it's pretty open-ended. I've been asked this before, and I don't really have like a great answer. I'm pretty art focused, like we talked about. So a lot of times it's like, oh, I know these pieces of art I want to like mess around with. And usually in terms of like prototyping, I just add rigid bodies to everything. And so I will go in and like add rigid bodies and colliders and see how like those merge together. And usually it's a lot of birth, I would say, is just like physics that feels and looks good. And so it's a lot of like we were looking at those like daily drawings, a lot of like, oh, what did I draw last night when I was drawing on the couch, and like, do I want to use any of that here? I have some sketches from like in a notebook that I will like take with me and write down like if I see like interesting shapes. There's most of the puzzle pieces in Birth, if they are like actual puzzle pieces, there's like a puzzle in the restaurant where the shapes are like they're like a geometric pattern. Those are usually things that I see like on buildings or on sidewalks, like tile patterns that I will just like take a picture of while I'm walking around outside, and then be like, that would be fun to make a rigid body.
There's a lot of this. There's a lot of like taking inspiration from your walks and just from exploring, right? Okay.
Yeah, I think that's super important. I think just focusing on like daily mundane things is also important. There's like a lost necklace sign that's in Birth, where someone's like posted a picture of where they lost their necklace, and that's just a real sign that I saw on a signpost.
Oh yeah,
it's like, I lost my necklace, here's a description. I was like, that's so amazing. I hope they find their necklace, and I will use that as inspiration.
I love that. That adds so much charm and makes the town feel like a real place, because it is literally brought in from the real world. I really like that.
Thank you.
You're like curating these moments. It's really cool. Yes.
Stealing was what I would call them.
Stealing? Come on now. And so we also have this cool little like video of like the game in editor, which I would love to show.
Oh yeah, let's see.
Yeah, here. I love seeing this. Love seeing the rotation from 2D to 3D. So that's the world. There we go. Oh, so those are the layers. Do you want to speak to this? Is for like parallax reasons?
Yeah, they're all for parallax. And then also I just like things when you, like you were saying, like when you mouse over things, I like all the sprites to move around and stuff. And so they're all pretty much separate separate sprites. So and then that way they can like and that way they can like animate on separate like time scales and stuff. So you're not having everything look so clean. So that way when you like pan around in the city, it looks like really lively because it's never really repeating.
Right.
Yeah,
absolutely. And one thing I love about that I find very interesting about the structure of the game is you told me like when you got back into games, you were playing like Skyrim and Fallout, and those games are really open in terms of what you can do. And I wonder, is there like a connection here? Because when playing this game, you're pulled into this town and there's no like linear, or it's like do what you want, go to the bakery or go to this place first or go to that place, and there are hints from this place that you will need when you go to the other one, right? So you've kind of created this like little open world adventure as well.
Yeah, that's so neat. Yeah, my first games, the first 3 games are all, I guess the first one is open world, the one that we don't really count. But the other 2 are very linear. And so this was my first real experience of giving you like freedom to choose, which is kind of scary because I wanted to have a lot of control over like, then you do this, and then you do this, and then you do this. So it is kind of scary to like release that timing. But I think if you make something good, you can, like I was saying about when we were watching the moon thing, I just find a lot of inspiration in games that are confident enough to like just say like, okay, I made this stuff and like I trust that you will figure it out. And so it is ultimately, I think like I found a lot of joy in giving the player freedom to like not have to like follow the steps that I laid out for them. Right.
And I guess that changes the way you design the individual pieces. They don't rely on each other and all that. And but the tutorial I thought was really, really nicely done. I always love seeing how people do tutorials in games, and yours is so like, you take objects that have very clear like affordances, like a tape recorder. What do? You drag the piece of like the tape and put it in the recorder, and then you press the button, right? A toaster, put the toast in the toaster. It's like, okay, now you know how to play the game. Right. Go. And there's like not a word not a word.
Yeah, like you were saying, it's mostly the game is most of the puzzle or like game design is just like move your mouse and see what happens. And so I think it's pretty easy to tutorialize that. And so I'm thankful that I would like to have as few words as possible telling you what to do. I would like for them. And there's not much dialogue at all in this. There's just that like beginning part with the book where it tells you why you want to make a body.
Oh, yes, that's right.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. And then the game comes out, of course.
The game comes out.
And when did it come out originally? 3 months ago, you said?
Yeah, February. Whoa, more than 3 months ago.
More than 3 months ago now.
February
3 months ago 17th. Since we first spoke. Yeah.
So, oh my gosh. February 17th is when it came out. And this was like the first release that I had gone to shows to show Birth and had done a ton of work to like try to spread the word about Birth and like show it and like kind of admit that I cared about how well it did.
Yeah.
And it came out in February and it did fine on release, but it I had read all the like Chris Zukowski numbers of like this many wish lists results in this many sales, and Birth just didn't match those numbers at all.
I see. So you had the wish list, but you weren't seeing the conversion person.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I don't know if it was the price, or the like subject matter, or if it was just like the release. I mean, it's so hard to know like what you've done wrong.
Right.
Yeah, but I was like, okay, I'm going to have to go get another job, which of course it's like a huge privilege to release a game and then be able to continue working on your next game. Like to be able to like instantly go to a next one is like a privilege that I shouldn't have like really expected to have, but
you were hoping for it. You were hoping for
yes,
it. And
absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. But that was not what happened when it came out, and was definitely like, okay, I'm going to work at a studio in Chicago, and had everything lined up. And then a few people made TikToks about it, and I don't have a TikTok, and I hate to even admit that TikTok is like a good thing for games, which other people say that, you know, like I'm not the first to say that. Everyone says like, you should be on TikTok. And I was like, no, I'm not going to be on TikTok.
I don't want to be like, I'm busy making the game, you know?
Yes. How can I make TikToks about the game and get the game done?
Seriously.
But two creators had made, I mean, a few other people made TikToks about it as well, but those two people made TikToks about it that just got millions of views. And that was like a huge turning point for Birth sales. And that was like maybe a month or two after it came out. So there was like a good month where I was like very humbled.
That's incredible. Wow. Yeah. So we have that TikTok. We have we have both of them. So we'll play the first one now.
Yeah.
And we can speak to it.
Yeah.
In this game, you are so lonely. You decide to stitch
so
together
this person I think is
a
made by a creator called Cozy Tea Games, and they make TikToks about cozy games. And
they have a following of people who are interested in those kinds of games, right? Yeah.
Yes, I've been surprised by, and I think like we were talking about, I think because the art carries Birth so heavily that it does show well on TikTok. Because it's just like, here, look at all this nice art and look at how you can play with things in the game.
You're right.
And
millions of views, huh? That must have been. How did you find out? Like, when did you first see it? Did somebody send it to you, or what?
That's actually so funny. It was because I saw a spike in sales, and I was at my partner's house, and we were like talking about like, why is Birth selling so well, and we don't have TikToks, and of course I at this point had like learned, do not type in Birth into TikTok, do not type Birth into Twitter. I saw way too much nasty actual Birth content that I was like, okay, I just won't learn if anyone's ever playing it because it's an impossible thing to search for.
Okay.
And luckily we did get TikTok and like typed it in and went through a lot of nasty content. My partner bore the brunt of it and was like, oh, I found the TikTok, I think, that's causing Birth to sell well. And I think the reviews too, like people had mentioned like, oh, I found this on TikTok. And I was like, oh, that's crazy because I don't have a TikTok. That, and then the second time I was like much
put the second one up as well now.
Okay,
the second one, and that happened how far apart?
I think these were weeks apart.
Okay.
But the second one I was like way more like, oh, okay, it's selling really well today. I think I know.
Check TikTok.
Yeah. And luckily the second one is I think his name's Jacob Forrester.
Okay.
And he had made like he had done a full stream on Twitch and then had clipped several videos into TikToks. And so just had a ton of TikToks that got a bunch of views. And
nice.
So that lasted for like several days because he was posting them for several days.
We're talking millions again? Like,
not on every single one, but on a few of them.
Yeah.
And I just felt so like humbled and like thankful that someone was like talking about it and like doing marketing. And I know that the creators also benefit from that.
Yeah.
But it just feels like so special that someone's actions then like impact you completely, like impact your entire life is like so, just really humbling. And like really, I'm just like very thankful for those humans that connected with Birth enough to talk about it online.
It just gives you this feeling of like gratefulness, right?
It does. Gratitude. That like humanity is like if you make a good thing, they will come. And I know that's a naive thing to say, but I do I believe it.
Right. You felt recognized, and you were kind of to send us the graph. So we'll put that image up of like the actual jump you saw. You woke up one morning, you checked your Steam sale graph, and you just see these big jumps.
It was like more than my launch, and I can't like show like actual numbers, but that first jump is my like launch day, and then the second two are from TikTok.
The other two. Oh wow! So it's like more than launch. You say okay?
It was so crazy. And then since then, the algorithm has luckily picked it up, and now I don't need a bunch of people to make TikToks.
You're not depending on TikToks, but they helped create that spark. So they were like, okay, interesting. So, but I feel like you can extrapolate that, and whether it's TikTok or not, if you get a spark that gives you those bumps, you can that like will contribute towards you getting picked up by the algorithm of Steam. Okay.
I think so, and I feel really lucky because I know none of my other games obviously have any traction, and they still sell like a small amount because of Birth, and I'm sure Birth will like benefit from the next game that I come out with, and so on and so forth. But yeah, I just feel very thankful that anyone talked about it in order to, now Steam just handles it on its own. And it's not, of course, it's not like this like massive success, but it's enough for me to put them in here. It has overwhelmingly positive reviews, which is like my number one measure of success. Yeah,
absolutely.
And I'm able to like work on the ports and my next game freely, which is just like the best thing in the world.
So you achieved it. You're working on it. That's so cool. That's so cool. And I actually would love to talk about that, like just the experience porting to Xbox. So now like basically we talked about everything that happened, and now we're talking about what's to come in the next 2 days for the Xbox launch, and beyond that, we'll vaguely talk about that. But for porting to Xbox, what was that experience like? Did Unity enable you to do this, or like did you do it yourself? Did you give it to a porting studio? How did that go?
Yeah, so I knew that I wanted to do it on my own in the same way that like I just want to do every piece of game development on my own, even if it's not the most efficient way to do things. And Unity has built-in modules that'll allow you to like port to different consoles. And so as long as you're working with the console to have the dev kit, you can get access to then the packages that give you those like build options. And I was using I'd converted Birth over the summer because I knew I wanted to do controller support. And so I'd converted to the new input system. I'd never used it before. And I had to upgrade Unity there.
Okay.
And so then it was pretty simple to get, obviously, like the controller working. I would say the hardest part is like handling user accounts and like the Xbox Live stuff, and making sure like your achievements are good, and like just doing all the asynchronous like connection stuff. But other than that, the package is like super. If you've ever imported a package into Unity, it's like as simple as downloading a package from your account manager giving you access and importing it there. It did take me longer than I thought in some ways, but shorter on the technical side, longer on the submitting to certification and getting things approved and bug fixing. And then, so that took much longer. I would say give yourself several months if you're looking at any
like a lot of back and forth with like Microsoft, basically. Okay.
Yeah, and just like when you disconnect a controller here, this happens, or like when we ran it on this environment, it didn't work. And so, I went through CERT probably like 10 times.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. But you got there, and it's good now for the night. Like, are you gold for after tomorrow?
I did have to push one update yesterday, 2 days ago.
No,
I was very nervous that it wasn't going to get through CERT, but luckily they're like pretty responsive after you like get your page live and stuff. They like have a different email that you can say like, hey, can you please submit, certify my build? Because I had to submit something new. And I release in several days. So they definitely have, Xbox in general has a ton of programs that the ID at Xbox program that Birth is a part of is like super, super helpful and responsive. And they have a diverse creators program as well. So, and that Birth is also a part of that. So in general, it was from both ends. Unity's end, I did have to get Unity Pro. in order to get access to that. But yeah, both Unity side and Microsoft side were like really easy to work with. And yeah, it took a lot of time to do like stuff that wasn't necessarily the technical porting.
Yeah. But the fact that you managed to do it all on your own is pretty awesome. And you didn't have to like,
and
hire
it feels
someone or
Yeah, it feels really nice to know that if a bug happens that I will be able to fix it immediately versus having to ask someone like, hey, do you have capacity right now to fix a bug that just happened?
That's so true. Okay.
Yeah. So I find a lot of comfort and like having control over all aspects of it in general.
Absolutely. And we mentioned like the future. So obviously you said you're going to be working on your next game. There's been a theme with the games you've worked on so far, right? Can we assume that you're going to continue on this trajectory and like build on these themes and the art style? Like what kind of games are you into making?
Yeah.
Overall?
So I think I've like fully developed the art style that I want to stick with and improve on.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I think the like dusty pinks and like gray blues, the color scheme will probably stay pretty similar.
Yeah.
Just with like more detail and like higher res. So Birth is not in 4K, but my next game will be in 4K.
Nice.
Yeah, so it's fun working at a higher resolution for sure. Yeah. And I think just overall adding more animations.
Okay.
Right now, I think Birth moves a lot, but there could be so much more that you can do when I
so
look at it
bigger.
now.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So more animations, more detailed art, more art in general. And then I also would like to move towards like the next game that I'm working on is much more structured in terms of like design systems and having something that would birth a lot of, and all of my games in general, I just made puzzles that you would play for like 20 seconds and then you would move on to the next one. And there wouldn't really be a lot of like, oh, because I did that, now I know how to do the next one. There's like no building up to something really. It's just more like, here's some more art that I made. What do you do now? And so for my next game, I would like for there to be more structure and more like specific building upon things. I would like for things to be revisited sometimes. Yeah, so I think in general, just making more art and denser worlds.
I see. And so do you see yourself in the point and click adventure genre just for the future, or were you curious to explore other genres, or are you happy in this world? Or will time tell?
I think I will stay in point and click forever. I think I just like the interaction of like the way the screen can be set up and like how you mess around with things. I would like to do more with like more playful controls in general that are not just like clicking and pointing, especially with the controller. I feel like the controller is just like a really fun thing that I didn't really use to its maximum capacity because I just had like a cursor on the screen, but I feel like I could have done way more if I used it like I was using the example of like a Bop It earlier. If I had used it in like how do you play with this toy?
Twist it.
Yeah.
Bop it. Yeah.
I do think I was talking with my partner recently about I think the Wii in general is probably where the like point and click games thrived the most because I mean there weren't really many point and click games for the Wii, but you had the Wiimote that like is an extension of yourself kind of. Yeah. And so I think just having more playful controls and porting to more consoles.
Okay, cool. Okay, that's good to hear. And I love seeing the progression you already had, right? For like we already talked about this, all the games, and there was clear progression. I'm so curious to see what the next, like, because Birth already felt like the culmination of your work, and now like what's next? I'm very excited for that.
Me too.
And I will wait patiently. I will ask no more questions about it.
I'm also waiting patiently for my brain to create new things.
Yes. Okay. Cool. So as we come to the end of these things, we do two things. We do the lightning round, and then we do the final takeaways and advice that you have. So we'll start with the lightning round. Okay. So I have a bunch of questions for you, which I'm going to throw right at you, and you have to answer as fast as you can. Okay. So are you ready?
I am.
Ready to go? Is chat ready? Everyone's ready? We're going to do this? Okay. So top 5 games of all time.
Silent Hill 2 is really high on my list. I think that's number 1. Resident Evil Code Veronica. Also, we've shown it today. Nights into Dreams that we also showed.
Yeah.
That's high on there. Tunic
So
recently
Ooh, nice.
is one of my favorites. And then I like Picross in all its forms, but I think Picross 3D on the 3DS is the best Picross. And I unfortunately have a lot of hours sunk into any form of Picross, so I unfortunately have to put Picross on my favorite games.
There you go. Okay, that's a great list. Okay, very unique.
You.
First game you remember playing?
Wind Waker, I think.
Oh wow. Okay, that's on my top 5 list. So okay. Favorite Unity tool?
Favorite Unity tool? I don't know. The console, I guess. I debug log a lot of stuff.
Fair enough. Hey, that's a very
the physics system. Can
answer.
I change my answer? Physics system.
You can. Physics system. Okay. Mario or Luigi?
Luigi was my first childhood crush, actually.
Oh my god, I think that's the first. I love that. Luigi would be very happy to hear that. That's so cute. Upcoming game you're most excited about right now?
Oh, upcoming game. Mars First Logistics, I think.
Okay.
Or maybe any of the new Silent Hills also that are coming out.
Oh, nice. That's true. They did announce some.
Yeah.
So, which of your, assuming you have any, side projects that aren't your main thing, are you most excited about right now? And it doesn't have to be games.
Side projects. I'm reading, this isn't really a side project, but I'm reading The Making of Karateka right now. And would like to play Karateka. It's written by Jordan Mechner. It's like a collection of his journals from when he was making Karateka. And then he also has The Making of Prince of Persia that I read. So I don't know if you can call that a side project.
That's a reading. That's a hobby. Yeah. So there we go.
Reading a book.
That's the thing you're most into. If you had to shout out another creator who you think would be amazing for the series for us to bring on for the Unity Tales series.
Ooh, that's a good question. What Unity developers? Well, Andrew Shoulders from
I've done that. We brought him on. Yes.
Okay, he's already been on.
We did Tunic. Yeah.
Ooh. Okay. So Noah from, I don't know Noah's last name, but he works on Smooshy Come Home. He's a solo dev. That uses Unity, and he's just the coolest guy. So
awesome. Okay. Cool. So cats or dogs?
Oh, dogs.
Okay. Nice. Dogs. Same. If you wouldn't be a game dev, what would you be?
Oh, a librarian or a preschool teacher, I think.
Oh, really? Okay,
yeah.
awesome. Nice.
Yeah.
AI, yay or nay?
I guess it depends on the context. Probably nay, though, especially recently.
Okay, fair. So, all right. So that's the end of the lightning round. Good job.
That was good. Thank you.
You ran through it. You did a great job.
Thank you.
So everyone chat shouting dogs. So
thank you, dogs. I actually have
dog lovers.
My dog here who also would be typing dogs if she could type dogs, but she can't.
So cute.
Her name is Spaghetti.
Oh my god. Was that
Maybe
while you were using Bolt?
Have her on Unity Tales. She has a lot of stuff to share.
I would love to. Unity Tales, Spaghetti.
Yes. Made in Unity.
So cute. That was such a surprise. She was sitting there the whole time. What was that?
She's a big lap dog.
That's so cute. Okay, so we usually end this, and we actually had some questions in the chat related to this, looking for some advice. So I'll start with this person's question and then ask you the general question, which is Tron Volta asks, would you encourage others to start a company to do indie dev? What challenges to look out for? I'm debating this myself. And then, so I'll just ask you the general question. You can work that into your question into your answer if you'd like to, but just any, this has been such a big journey for you, and I'm sure you've lots of ups and downs, and you must have faced a lot of challenges and learned a lot in the process. So if you have any advice or final takeaways for people embarking on a similar journey, what would the one takeaway be? Or a bunch.
Or a few takeaways.
Or a few takeaways,
I would say my number one piece of advice is always make something every day. Like make sure you're thinking about something and sitting down and even if it's the tiniest little 5-minute thing, I think that's really important. I think if you're not addicted to doing it, if you're not obsessed with it, then there's probably not a lot of advice that I have. And it's hard to be my advice is to be obsessed with the thing, but it is. And I feel like that's the only way that you can truly finish and feel good about something without burning out on it, is you just have to love it with your whole heart. There's a talk by Dan Edelman that I have recently been talking about with my partner, where he says if you're not just obsessed with doing it, then you're probably better off like franchising a Subway, just from a financial point of view, and probably mental health point of view too. You're probably just like,
that's hilarious.
We'll be better off that way. Yeah. Would I recommend someone like starting a company and quitting my job? I guess it kind of goes back to like, if you're addicted to working on something, if you're obsessed with working on something and you have the financial means, then I would absolutely recommend it. If you do not have the financial means, or it would be a financial risk for you, I would not recommend doing it. Yeah. It was so stressful for me, even though I had the funding. I only had the funding for, like you were saying, like a certain number of months, and was not like looking at a huge amount of leeway. But if you have the financial means, by all means, I'm envious and would love to have had that years ago. But I think, like we were talking about, if you're making things without thinking too much, I think you make better things. And so if you're making things while thinking about like, how will this market? How will I market this? How will this like do when I release it? I don't know how much you grow in that capacity. But if you're already making stuff and you already know you love it, then absolutely quit your job. I want anyone to quit their corporate America job and make their own thing.
That's awesome. Okay. I mean, I think we need to leave it at that. That was some great advice. Thank you so much, Grace, for Madison. And thank you so much for, I said Grace there because
someone else has called me Grace.
That's so funny because we were talking about Grace before the show and we were like, oh, we hope we can get Grace on later as well.
That's so funny.
No, thank you so much, Madison. It was such a pleasure. And like, you took so much time to prepare all those videos for us. And it was really so great to have you. And hopefully, you will have you back with your future games, future endeavors. So and thank you to everybody in the chat for your questions coming from YouTube and Twitch. I appreciate that.
So cool.
So we'll see you around, and make sure to follow us on Twitch, subscribe to us on YouTube to be notified every time we go live. Thanks everyone. Ciao. Bye-bye.